My name is Alina Moore. I'm 27. I fix things: pipes, walls, roofs, entire rooms, things people throw away or call broken. But I never expected the thing I couldn't fix would be my own family. You're the shame of this family, Alina. That's what my father told me, dead serious on the night of my 27th birthday. No candles, no cake, just that sentence, cold and sharp like a knife to the spine. He leaned back in his chair like he was proud of it. My mother clinked her glass and added, "Your sister's in surgery saving lives. And you? You're out there, fixing leaky sinks? You should be embarrassed." Then they laughed. Together. At me. That night, I didn't just walk away from dinner. I walked away from being their daughter. If you've ever been the odd one out, the one who's too different, not impressive enough, not worthy, you're not alone. And I hope you'll stick with me for this story. If you've ever been underestimated or told your dream didn't matter, hit that like button, drop a comment below, and don't forget to subscribe. Because this isn't just about betrayal. It's about what happens when the one they looked down on decides to rise, quietly, steadily, and build something no one saw coming. They crowned my sister their golden girl, but while they were busy bragging about Celeste, I was building something behind the scenes. And tonight, they're going to find out exactly who I am. Not with yelling, not with revenge, just truth, served cold and beautifully undeniable. Growing up, I always knew I wasn't her. Celeste, the prodigy, the prodigal daughter, the crown jewel of the Moore family. She got straight A's, trophies taller than her, a full ride to med school, and applause, always applause. Me? I liked building things. I loved the feel of a screwdriver in my hand, the way wood responded to pressure, how broken things made sense when you paid attention. But to my parents, that wasn't ambition. That was a hobby. I still remember my mom sighing when I told her I wanted to go to trade school. "Alina, sweetie, don't you want a real career?" As if fixing what's broken isn't real work. As if rebuilding homes doesn't rebuild lives. Celeste, meanwhile, got a celebration when she was accepted into Johns Hopkins. They threw a party with catered food and matching t-shirts. When I got certified in HVAC repair, my dad glanced at the paper and said, "Well, at least it's something." He didn't even look me in the eye. They called Celeste the future. They called me the phase they hoped I'd grow out of. Every time a pipe burst in the house or their water heater failed, guess who they called? Not a professional. Not even a thank you. Just me. Because I was convenient. I remember one Sunday lunch when I showed up late after finishing an emergency fix at an elderly woman's home. No charge, by the way. My hands were still dirty, my shirt stained from crawling under a sink. Celeste arrived 10 minutes after me in heels and a lab coat she just happened to still be wearing. She got applause. I got told to clean up before touching the furniture. But here's the truth they never saw. While Celeste chased approval, I chased purpose. She learned how to suture skin. I learned how to save a collapsing foundation. They never saw the woman I was becoming because they were too blinded by the one they had already crowned. And that's what hurts most. Not that I wasn't enough, but that they never even looked close enough to find out who I really was. They never asked what I did after trade school. They just assumed I'd coast from one odd job to another, living paycheck to paycheck, waiting for life to happen. But while they were busy tracking Celeste's every promotion, every hospital she rotated through, I was learning how to make drywall breathe again, how to seal leaking roofs in the dead of winter, how to turn empty lots into homes. I didn't tell them when I bought my first place, a beat-up duplex on the edge of town, peeling paint, rusted pipes, mold in the corners. To my parents, it would have looked like a waste of money. But to me, it looked like freedom. I spent every weekend fixing that place up, replacing flooring, rewiring bad circuits, scraping years of neglect off the walls. Then I rented it out. And when that income came in, I leveraged it, bought another, then another. While Celeste was posting pictures from her hospital galas and medical mission trips, I was comparing interest rates, meeting with city inspectors, and hauling tools in the back of my dusty pickup truck. They thought I was just getting by. But I was building a foundation, literally and figuratively. I kept it quiet, because what would have been the point? If I'd told them I was a landlord, my dad would have said, "Slumlords aren't careers." If I'd said I was building equity, my mom would have blinked like I was speaking another language. If I'd mentioned I was making more in passive income than their combined salaries, they would have rolled their eyes and accused me of exaggerating. So I stayed silent. I worked, I learned, I reinvested. By the time I turned 26, I had 4 properties. Each one paid off more than just bills. It paid back every moment I'd been overlooked, every time they called me the family fixer like it was an insult. And you know what the wildest part is? The whole time I was growing this thing, this life they knew nothing about, Celeste started unraveling. The cracks started small, missed family dinners, canceled plans. But I noticed, and for the first time in my life, I didn't feel like the one who was lost. I didn't gloat, I didn't brag, but I knew. My silence had power. While they laughed at my work boots and paint-stained jeans, I was quietly becoming the most grounded person in the family. Not because I had something to prove, but because I finally stopped trying to prove it to them. For most of my life, I thought Celeste had it all. She was the golden girl, the one they paraded around at every family gathering like a prize they'd won. If I so much as changed the oil in someone's car, I got a grunt. But if Celeste breathed near an operating room, it became a standing ovation. I figured she loved it. That spotlight, that praise, that pressure. She always seemed so composed, so perfect. But perfection has a price. It wasn't until I saw the cracks that I realized Celeste hadn't escaped the trap. She'd just been caught in a shinier version of the same cage. It started subtly. She'd show up to Sunday dinners looking tired, makeup smudged, her smile strained. When I asked how she was doing, she'd say, "Busy," and change the subject. Then came the missed calls, the delayed replies, the nervous glances toward her phone like she was waiting for something bad to happen. At first, I thought it was burnout. Hospitals do that to people. But then, one night, I ran into her husband, well, ex-husband now, at a coffee shop near my second property. He looked hollow. After a few awkward pleasantries, he said almost bitterly, "You know, Celeste doesn't live her life. She performs it. For your parents, for her boss, for anyone clapping." That hit harder than I expected, because I realized she hadn't just chased their approval. She'd built her entire identity around it. All the European vacations, she paid. The fancy kitchen remodel in our parents' home, also her. The cruise they posted about on Facebook last year, Celeste funded it. They never asked her if she could afford it. They just expected her to give, because that's what successful daughters do, and she gave, until there was nothing left. Later, when Celeste finally broke down and called me, her voice shaking, her pride shattered, I didn't hear a perfect doctor on the line. I heard a woman who had spent her whole life trying to be good enough for people who never learned how to love without conditions. She wasn't just their favorite, she was their investment. And now that she couldn't pay anymore, they were looking for a new source. And surprise, it was me. Suddenly, the handyman daughter with no real career was getting calls about pulling together as a family, but this time I wasn't the one who needed help, and for the first time ever, Celeste was. She called me close to midnight. Not a text, not a voicemail, a real call, something we hadn't done in years. The screen lit up with her name, and for a moment I just stared at it. Celeste never called unless she needed something fixed. A door hinge, a laptop, a leaky faucet. But this time, it wasn't something she could fix with a wrench or a prescription pad. When I picked up, she was crying, hard, the kind of crying that makes you forget how to breathe. "I messed up, Alina," she choked out. "I really messed up." I sat up in bed, trying to piece together what could possibly shatter her like this. Turned out she'd lost her job 3 months ago, fired, not restructured, not let go, fired. And no one knew, not our parents, not her friends. She'd been pretending for months, dressing up for family dinners, talking about hospital shifts that didn't exist, Ubering to interviews because her BMW had been repossessed. She was broke, Savings gone, credit maxed out, eviction notice on the door of her fancy condo, and still, she hadn't told anyone, except me. I could have laughed. I could have said, "Now you know how it feels to be invisible?" But I didn't. Instead, I told her about a small 2-bedroom unit that had just opened in one of my properties. Nothing flashy, nothing fancy, but clean, safe. Heron. She went quiet for a long moment. "Why would you do this after everything?" she whispered. I thought about all the years she sat there, letting our parents tear me down. The smug smiles, the silence, but also the fatigue in her voice now, the quiet ache of someone whose world had finally collapsed. "Because I'm not like them," I said softly. I didn't tell her I owned the building. I didn't tell her I'd stocked the fridge, checked the plumbing, made sure the utilities were all set. I just handed her the key. The irony wasn't lost on me. The forgotten daughter, the one who'd been laughed at, dismissed, ignored, was now giving shelter to the family's golden girl. And somehow that didn't feel like revenge. It felt like power, the kind that doesn't scream, the kind that builds quietly, brick by brick, while no one's watching, the kind that says, "I survived." And now I get to decide who comes through the door. It was supposed to be a simple dinner, a quiet celebration for my grandparents' 50th anniversary. But the moment I walked in and saw my parents already seated at the table, I knew something was off. Celeste was there too, shoulders slouched, eyes heavy. She looked small, not the confident, polished doctor my parents loved to brag about, just a tired woman who'd run out of masks. Na walked beside me, calm as ever. It was the first time I brought her into my family's world. I hadn't wanted to, but tonight, something told me it was time. My mother's eyes scanned Na like she was a discount item at a clearance sale. "A bookstore?" "How quaint," she said before turning to me. "So, Alina, I hear you arranged housing for your sister. That was generous." I smiled, but there was steel beneath it. "She needed a place. I had one." My father let out a low chuckle. Amazing what odd jobs can do these days. Na's hand gently squeezed mine under the table, and then my father cleared his throat, the same way he used to before giving long lectures about hard work and discipline. "Alina, your mother and I have been reflecting. Celeste has supported this family for years, vacations, renovations, dinners out, but she can't do it alone anymore. We think it's time you contribute more meaningfully." My mother leaned in, voice sugar-coated. "We're not asking for much, just a small family loan. 20,000. We know you're doing better now." I looked around the table. Celeste wouldn't meet my eyes. My grandparents were silent, but alert. I could feel my grandmother watching me carefully, like she already knew what was coming. So I set my fork down and spoke clearly. "You want the truth? That duplex Celeste is living in? I don't manage it. I own it. In fact, I own 5 properties now. I run a small real estate business that brings in more than both of you made in your best years. Last month alone, over 20,000 in clean profit." My mother paled. My father froze mid-breath. "And the past year? I've been covering Grandpa and Grandma's rent, their medical gap insurance too. Because while you two were waiting for Celeste's next paycheck, someone else was stepping up." Quietly. Then my grandfather added softly, "And we've made Alina the trustee of our estate. Everything goes through her now. She's earned it." My parents stared like they didn't recognize me. But Celeste, she finally spoke. "They used me too, Mom," she said, voice breaking. "You never asked what I needed. You just took." I stood slowly. "You always called me the disappointment, the girl who plays with tools." Bo, I glanced toward Na, who was smiling proudly. I was quietly building something of my own, something solid, something real. Then I turned and walked out. This time, no one dared stop me. As I turned to leave the dining room, the silence behind me cracked, not from my parents, but from the soft, steady voice of my grandfather. "Alina," he said, "wait a moment." I stopped in the hallway, hand still resting on the doorknob. I turned slightly, just enough to see his eyes. They were warm but sharp, sharp in the way only someone who's spent a lifetime watching people can be. "You've been holding this family up for longer than anyone knows," he continued, his voice calm but firm. "And it's time we said it, out loud." I glanced toward my grandmother. She was dabbing her eyes with the corner of her napkin, but she was smiling, the kind of smile that holds both pride and regret. My mother opened her mouth, likely to object, but my grandfather raised a single hand, stopping her cold. "June and I have watched you all treat Alina like she was less accomplished, less worthy, less important, and we've said our piece many times, but maybe now you'll finally listen." My father scoffed, but this time he didn't speak. "You built your life from the ground up," my grandfather said to me, locking eyes with mine. "You didn't ask for handouts. You didn't chase applause. You just did the work." My grandmother added gently, "And you did it with grace, Alina, even when they turned their backs on you." Then she turned to my mother. "Do you even realize that in all the years you praised Celeste, you never once asked Alina what made her happy? Not once." My mother's face turned red, but she said nothing. My grandfather continued, "We've made Alina trustee of our estate for one reason. We trust her judgment, not just because she's done well for herself, but because she knows what it means to care for others, even when they don't deserve it." He looked at Celeste. "And you, sweetheart, you were never meant to carry the burden alone." Celeste nodded silently, tears beginning to spill down her cheeks. "And you too," he said, turning to my parents. "You always measured success by job titles, salaries, social circles. But let me tell you something." He pushed his chair back and stood up slowly. "Success isn't about how loud you shout your achievements. It's about who quietly shows up, day after day, without needing applause." Then he looked at me. "Alina, you showed up. For your sister. For us. Even after everything." I swallowed hard, the weight of years pressing behind my eyes. "I didn't do it for recognition," I whispered. "I know," he said. "That's what makes it real." And in that moment, something in the air shifted. For the first time in my life, I wasn't the embarrassment. I wasn't the backup plan. I wasn't the fixer in the background. I was seen, fully, clearly, proudly. And that was more valuable than anything they could have ever said before. A few days after that dinner, I stopped by my grandparents' house again, this time just me and Na. No tension, no expectations, just quiet warmth. While Grandma was in the kitchen preparing tea, I wandered down the hallway, the one that used to make my chest tighten every time I passed it. The Family Achievement Wall. For years, it had been a shrine to Celeste. Photos of her in scrubs, receiving her white coat, shaking hands with deans and surgeons, plaques from conferences, medals from med school, and one lonely photo of me, my high school graduation, faded and shoved into the far corner like an afterthought. But this time, something was different. The wall had changed. Right next to Celeste's framed diploma now hung a picture of me, standing in front of my first building, holding a sold sign with paint-stained jeans and a proud, tired smile. Another frame held a copy of the business license I'd registered 2 years ago, and underneath it all, a small brass plaque. Alina Moore, builder of foundations. I just stood there, still, silent. Na stepped beside me and whispered, "They see you now." But it wasn't about finally being equal to Celeste. It was about finally being seen for who I actually am. Later that week, I slid behind the wheel of my old 2008 Civic, the one my parents always sneered at. They used to mock it. "Still driving that tin can? Don't you want something more respectable?" But that car, it was paid off. It never failed me. It carried tools, supplies, furniture, even Celeste's suitcases when she moved. It never tried to impress. It just worked, just like me. And that modest duplex I gave Celeste, it became more than just shelter. It became a mirror. Every creaking floorboard, every patch of peeling paint told the truth. You don't need perfection to be worthy. You need honesty, resilience, and a door you can open without fear. One evening, I came by to fix a broken cabinet hinge and found Celeste sitting on the tiny concrete patio, her laptop open, hair in a loose bun, coffee in hand. "You know," she said, "this place, it's not big, but it's the first time I've felt like I can breathe in years." And I realized, while my parents had spent a lifetime building illusions of status, of control, of hierarchy, I had been building something real, a life, a home, a name, and the world didn't need to clap for me anymore. Because every nail I drove, every lease I signed, every broken thing I put back together was already applause enough. It didn't take long for word to spread. Apparently, my parents had hoped the dinner would end with a check, not a reckoning. Instead, it ended with silence they couldn't control. And nothing terrifies them more than silence they don't understand. A week later, my father called. I didn't pick up. Then came a string of texts. "We just want to talk. Don't let this one dinner define everything." "Family is supposed to stick together." I didn't respond, until one afternoon when Celeste knocked gently on my office door. "Mom and Dad asked me to talk to you," she said, eyes tired but honest. "They don't know how to handle the fact that you've surpassed them." I raised an eyebrow. "Financially?" "In every way," she replied. She sat on the old sofa I'd thrifted years ago and looked around the room like she was seeing it, really seeing it, for the first time. "You know," she said quietly, "when we were growing up, I used to think you were just drifting, no plan, no future, but now—" She looked at me, and there was no condescension in her voice, just clarity. "I realize you were just doing what they never taught us, living for yourself." I smiled. "It's not that complicated. I stopped trying to be something they'd applaud and started becoming someone I'd respect." She nodded. "They want you to come over. Apologize for the way things were said." I laughed. Not bitter, just tired. "Let me guess. Not for what they did. Just for how I made them feel about it." She gave a small, sad chuckle. "Pretty much." I leaned forward, elbows on my knees. "You know the funny part?" I said. "They used to tell me I'd never amount to anything, that I'd always be scraping by, fixing things that didn't matter." Celeste stayed quiet. I continued, "Now I'm the one who signs the checks. I'm the one making decisions, and they can't stand that the girl with the toolbox grew up to hold the power they always thought belonged to them." Then I added, soft but sharp, "They built a wall of expectations. I built an empire behind their backs." Celeste whispered, "That's going to haunt them." I shook my head. "Good. Let it." Then I stood and walked her to the door. Before she left, she turned and said, "They were wrong about you, you know?" I didn't answer. I didn't need to. Because finally, the story was no longer about proving them wrong. It was about living right, on my own terms, in my own voice, without permission, without apology, and that was the loudest thing I'd ever said. It's been 6 months. My parents haven't called. They haven't shown up, not since I made it clear that silence, for once, would be mine to keep. Celeste still lives in that little duplex. She's doing better, working part-time at a community clinic, teaching a workshop for pre-med students. The titles are smaller now, but her smile is real. Last week, she brought over dinner, homemade lasagna in a foil tray. We ate it on the floor of my office, surrounded by blueprints and toolboxes. No pretense, no pressure, just 2 sisters rebuilding something that was never allowed to grow. Na and I? We're stronger than ever. She tells me often, "You didn't just survive them, Alina. You outgrew them." And maybe she's right, because these days I don't check my phone waiting for praise. I don't shrink in rooms where titles echo louder than truth. I walk into them knowing I built my own life, with my own hands, from the ground up. No borrowed spotlight, no applause required. My Civic still runs, my properties are thriving, and the toolbox my grandfather gave me when I was 12, it sits on a shelf in my office, polished, revered, and full of stories. The family achievement wall at my grandparents' house now has two center frames. One is Celeste, smiling gently in a group photo with her clinic staff. The other is me, standing in front of my newest renovation site, sleeves rolled, eyes bright, holding a hard hat and a future only I could design. And if there's one thing I've learned through it all, it's that the quiet ones, the ones no one bets on, we don't need to win their game, we just build our own damn scoreboard. If this story spoke to something inside you, hit that like button, leave a comment below, and subscribe to the channel. Because somewhere out there, someone's being told they'll never make it, and they need to hear this. You're not behind, you're just building quietly, and one day, the whole world will notice.